fire at all.
Yeah, it was fine.
Turns out that, it
you
does
throw
catch fire.
something that is blistering hot next to it, and the thing goes up like a piece of paper.
Something that's like, say, 1,000 degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
In fairness, most things will catch fire at 1,000 degrees centigrade.
That's true.
Which is why it's
hard to find stuff.
It is hard to find, and that's why they had to find stuff that wasn't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for a decade or two, they were packing airplanes with this stuff, thinking that it was resistant to fires, when in fact it wasn't.
Well, it was resistant to most normal fires.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If, as Joe said, some idiot flicked his cigarette into the corner and it caught the carpet on fire, the insulation probably wouldn't have burned.
Yeah. And in fairness, it was much, much better than the stuff that was made out of ammonium percolate that it replaced.
No, that never was a thing.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay,
what are we talking about?
Back to here. Do you remember PR? The pallet that is in question,
right
that was where the flame was supposedly have taken
PR
place?
pallet,
yes. Well, according to the work that Mark Young has done, he has figured out that there was a main wiring path that ran above PR, and that wiring path used this wire that the Kapton wiring, and it was also underneath or directly on top of insulation. So if wet arcing took place, it would have caught that insulation on fire. That insulation would have eventually burned enough to fall on top of the pallet, which would have kept the fire above the deck of the plane, which would explain, it's that super hot, that slag is going to happen in that super high temperature, and then the fire is going to continue to burn upwards right there. It really kind of nicely bundles up
it does.
a bunch of the evidence we have for where and what the fire did.
Yeah, particularly if it started burning down a little bit, if it's starting to burn into those plastics, the fumes that are coming off of that,
it's going to be a little stanky.
You've ever thrown plastic into like a campfire or whatever?
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, and it gets like really, really smoky and like you start coughing
really acrid.
bad.
You don't want to be inhaling that stuff.
So, if that's starting to burn like a little bit, it's going to really complicate things a lot.
No,
that's a good.
It'll put some toxic fumes into the rest of the plane.
The other thing,
one thing I wanted to mention too is if you look at his website that has his arguments on it, he has drawings of exactly where that wiring course was. And it precisely corresponds to the place where all the heat damage took place.
It does, and nobody has officially reinvestigated it, but he makes a really good argument. His argument also does explain something else, which is on the voice data recorder, the crew talks about to the tower the fact that they're having problems with their electronics.
Yeah.
Well, if their main wiring path is on fire,
that's going to knock a few things out.
That's going to screw up the electronics.
Absolutely.
So it totally makes sense.
Yeah, they were like circuit breakers were popping. Yeah, then that sound got picked up on the cockpit voice recording.
It did.
And I could just see that as wires melted together, and you got shorts, and
you're going to make arcs and shorts, and
circuit breakers
are going to do what they're supposed to.
Yeah,
they're going to start snapping, and you can't turn them back on. It's not like your house where you blow a fuse and you just go turn it back on. It doesn't work like that on the plane because the wire is gone.
Yeah,
completely gone.
It makes me wonder if whether they would have even been able to land the plane, even if the crew had survived and the plane had remained intact.
Yeah, would they have been able to get the landing gear down? For
would
instance?
they?
That's a really good question because there is Joe. You may remember the exact wording for this, but I can't. Is that planes there used to be fly-by-wire where all the controls were done by wire. And then, like the throttle.
And cables, internal cables and stuff.
And then I can't remember what it is when it's done by electronics, but those big planes are not fly-by-wire. They are totally done by electrical signals, turning everything on and off.
Yeah, I'm not
sure.
So
I think that they may not have been. The best they probably could have done was actually belly down on the runway if they'd been able to come in.
Well, I mean, I'm
belly
not
down
sure.
is better than like torpedoed into the water. Though.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
but no, I'm saying to ask your question, could they even got the landing gear down?
Probably not.
I don't think they could have.
If you work for an airline and you're on some long haul thing and you're listening to us through your earbuds while you're tootling along over the Pacific, then give us a call. Or send us an email. But I'm thinking that there has to be some sort of
backup.
manual hydraulic backup
Right?
for lowering the landing gear
I'm sure
and
that there
operating
is.
the controls. There has to be.
And
It would be insane to do anything else.
This always happens to us. We've all thought about this, but none of us took the time to look because it was a last-minute thought.
It didn't occur to me until just now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is in the back of my head, I kind of knew I needed.
And this is too much Googling for me to do on the fly.
No.
Yeah,
it's not like looking up what's a galleon. Oh, it's a Harry Potter thing.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
Yeah, I'll call Boeing tomorrow and find out.
All right, great.
You know what? I believe you will.
Yeah.
Let's move to our last theory.
All right.
Because believe it or not, we're way into this, and we still got one more theory left.
Oh God.
Yeah,
I thought you said this was going to be a short one.
Oh no! You saw the script. I've been writing bigger and bigger scripts. I'm working on a book.
I know you are.
Really.
Yeah, we might actually come out with a Thinking Sideways book. What do you think?
No, because we'll get sued because it's full of copy paste.
No, why would you admit that? No.
Wikipedia is going to sue us.
No.
Let's move on, though, to our next one, which our next theory is based on chemical oxygen generators. And we've talked about this a little bit in the very beginning. We threw it around, though we didn't explain what was going on. So let me explain what we're talking about here. You've been on a plane. You've seen the steward or stewardess explain how the oxygen masks drop, and then you're supposed to put your own mask on before you assist the elderly or children. Well, I foolishly, for a long, long time, just presumed that there was some giant canister of air on the plane that piped into those little rubber tubes.
Yeah, not quite true, huh?
Absolutely not true, because it turns out a giant tank of air is stupidly heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And you just can't be packing that around. That costs way too much fuel to lift up and down all the time when a plane flies.
Weird.
So instead what they do is they generate oxygen in a chemical fashion. And there's a chemical way to store it, and there's a bunch of, evidently, I had to read the science 800 times, and I'm still not 100% positive how this works, but there's potassium chlorate and sodium chlorate are rich in oxygen, and when put under the right circumstances or pressure situations, they will give up oxygen, much like sponge would that was full of water if you squeeze it. They just give off oxygen, which is pure, which is great when you want to pump it out to people because it is in a small pellet or cylinder form. So it's something that's very small and very light, and it just takes either a chemical reaction or a friction reaction to make this stuff activate. It doesn't actually burn so much. It's more of a decomposition, degradation of the material, but that's what puts out all the oxygen. But that process does generate a bunch of heat.
Yeah, it's like
I'm just trusting you on this.
Yeah, it's like actually, even burning. That's basically if you burn a piece of wood, that's oxidation.
Yeah, and it's what it is. You're breaking this material down, and one of its main byproducts turns out to be O2.
And the other byproduct is lots of heat.
Lots of heat. Yeah. So the O2 will go into your little mask, and it's super lightweight, and it's easy to transport, and you get to breathe if your oxygen mask comes down.
Me?
Yes, you.
Okay.
Or Joe.
No, just me.
Just you.
Yeah.
Okay, not Joe. You can't put on your mask.
Yeah, sorry.
Joe didn't put on his mask because we've heard him talking. Yeah. Me either, because I keep yabbering on. But
it's just me surviving now.
Devin's the only one who's going to survive.
That's like Devin's going solo.
But the point is, they're very light, but they do generate a bunch of heat. The problem with them is that they can, and they have in the past, ignited things that were near them. They generate that much heat in their degradation process. There's a what is it? It's ValueJet Flight 592. This was in 1996. It crashed 10 minutes after takeoff, and what they figured out was that there were chemical oxygen generators that were loaded on the plane.
Well, they were loaded in the cargo hold, though,
and
right?
improperly stowed.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have been there in the first place. And so they went off. And they generated a boatload of heat, which caused the plane to catch on fire and go down almost immediately.
Yeah, whereas on our 747, they would have all been stowed in the correct places.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they weren't hauling a cargo of these things.
But if this plane is meant to potentially have passengers in the area where the cargo is, that means there had to have been some kind of oxygen delivery system back there. It would have been, in the ceiling cavity somewhere, because that's where the chemical oxygen generator, I presume, would have been stored. I may be wrong on that, but all I can think what this theory is going for is that either the oxygen generator was ignited improperly through, friction can ignite them. That is one of the methods that's used to ignite them. Friction could have set it off, which created all that heat. And, oh, by the way, it's spewing oxygen out onto the fire it's created, which would make it burn super hot. Or the oxygen generator went off if it's not in that ceiling area. Again, I don't know where they are on a 747, but the oxygen would have been in that overhead compartment because that's where it has to drop out of, which means that there would have been a massive amount of pure O2 next to anything that could have caught on fire that then would subsequently burn obscenely fast and hot.
I've seen pictures of the insides of these holds, and I haven't seen anything that even resembles an oxygen breathing apparatus in there.
See, that was the thing, is that I know that when you look at your plane, there's the overhead, what is the overhead thing where you put your bags?
Yeah,
where the guy with the giant wheelie bags beats his huge bag that should have never been in the...
You can tell we've all traveled by air recently.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have watched that jack beat and then try and slam the door.
The overhead bin.
So those overhead bins wouldn't be there.
No, they're not.
But if the overhead bins were to be returned